Hey everyone, welcome. This is WP Product Talk again. Katie, welcome back.
Yeah, well, thanks for holding the fort while I was away for 2 weeks. I've listened to them both and they were really good episodes.
Nice, thanks. I appreciate that. Viewership is always welcome. I actually have been meaning to go back and watch the videos too. Like we should be watching our own stuff.
Yeah.
But we are kicking off a new episode today. Today we have a special guest, and I'm trying out a fun little thing. And we're going to have somebody introduce our guest here. But today we're going to be talking about top metrics for every WordPress product owner, top metrics that you should be tracking. So I'm excited to talk about it. It's one that I'm super passionate about myself. But for our special guest, here's the intro.
Hi, I'm Jamie Marsland and I'm introducing today's WP product guest, Vova Feldman. Vova is a serial entrepreneur and full stack developer who started his WordPress journey in 2011 when he launched ratingwidget.com and then turned it into a hugely successful plugin. Vova is passionate about helping fellow plugin and theme developers to make money through Freemius.com, his WordPress licensing platform that is now used by hundreds of WordPress plugins, including mine. Fun fact, I once shared a flat with Vova at WordCamp USA in Nashville in 2018. Now here's Vova. Enjoy the show.
Nice. That was Jamie Marsland, everyone. He has a great YouTube channel at JamieWP. Make sure to check it out. He's always talking about cool things. And here's Vova. Vova, thanks so much for being here.
Oh yeah, that was indeed a special intro, man. Thanks for the surprise. And yeah, I'm really excited to be here and share what I have, my 2 cents, and hopefully people find it useful.
Absolutely. Cool. Well, for today, anyone, if you are here watching on YouTube, make sure to use the chat and ask your questions in there. We definitely highlight them on the show and answer them live whenever they're there. Or if you're watching us on Twitter, you can use the hashtag WP Product Talk. I got to bring Twitter up right now. And I'll be paying attention there. So we can answer questions there as well. So the topic is top metrics every WordPress product owner should be tracking. And of course, we brought this up because Vova is kind of like a celebrity when it comes to WordPress metrics. When it comes to
I'm not sure if I want to be counted as a celebrity in that area, but that's another topic.
It's like the elephant in the room. If you're talking about these open source distributed projects trying to collect metrics in one form or another, it's a loaded subject. It can be a challenge. First thing we always try to do is talk about why we think this subject is so important for WordPress product owners. I'd love to hear everybody's take on that. Katie, can you kick us off? Why is the subject of WordPress product metrics so important for everyone?
I think it's a super important topic because you're running your business blind without the right metrics. And sadly, a lot of people in WordPress products are running their businesses kind of blind. I know I always have felt that in many ways, and metrics have always been a really big struggle for me at Barn2. It's a particular problem because a lot of WordPress businesses sell their plugins using platforms such as Easy Digital Downloads and WooCommerce, things like that, where the metrics are not specifically designed for selling WordPress products and also often quite basic. And even though you can add plugins and you've got that flexibility because it's self-hosted, there's often nothing available. We use Easy Digital Downloads. The metrics we need are not available. And I know there are hosted options, which Vova will talk about, which have better metrics. But as a WordPress company with a self-hosted website, that's always been a really big problem for me and lots of my colleagues.
Absolutely. That's good stuff. Vova, what is your take? Why are metrics in WordPress products so important?
Yeah, so I think metrics are important in general, not only in product businesses or in WordPress. We have intuitions in decisions that we make in business, or whatever you want to go to. But in the end of the day, we can't really predict what would be the outcome of our decisions. So it's important to have some framework to basically measure your efforts and resources in order to make sure that you're going to the right direction. I mean, if we look, everyone measures some sort of metrics. If you're selling something very basic, right, how how much money you're making by the end of the month. That's a metric that you're measuring that provides you some level of information about how successful your business is. But that's just very high level thing, and in the end of the day, you can measure like pretty much everything. It's not always like trivial to figure out how to measure some things, but it is critical if you want to optimize your efforts. We have, let's say, 14 hours per day to work if we don't have kids. By the way, I'm a fresh dad, so I'm just mentioning that. So I'm no longer working
Congrats, by the
14
way.
hours a day. So now I have less than that. And I want to get the most out of this 10, 11 hours. And in order to know if I'm getting the most, I need to measure the impact of the actions that I'm taking. So measurements and tracking are really important.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that a ton. And I've always really admired the Freemius blog and the way that you all have been promoting how important metrics are over the years for WordPress in general, for businesses in general. I totally agree with all of that. Ask anybody on my team how I feel about metrics, and they will laugh and they will tell you how much I love them. I don't think I can do anything. I have a lot of hats. I do a lot of technical support and customer success and marketing, product stuff. I think I have a spreadsheet for pretty much every every hat that I have. Probably at least a dozen spreadsheets for each job that I have. And it's because it helps me ground what I feel like we're doing, the health of where we're at. And when it comes to product in particular, I just feel like if you don't know how well, like a random one we can talk about at some point, if you don't know how well your free plugin is sending traffic to your website, like Katie said, it's like you're in the blind. I mean, is this actually benefiting you and your bottom line or not? If you don't know, for example, how many active installs you have, which is a little bit of a subject at the moment, you're kind of running in the blind a little bit. It's especially when you get into the really large numbers, it's you don't get to see your next number for quite a while unless you have some other ways to track what's going on, which is a loaded subject, which I've talked about a few times.
I will also add that it's it can help with motivation, right? Usually we're aiming to get to something, but it's a process. It's not like a binary thing, get there and it's done. And so it's a process. So you want to measure if you're on the right track and how it grows, whether you are is there a chance to achieve the goal that you actually set to yourself in the time that you set to get there. So it does help you to kind of see that progress over time, rather than just, okay, it worked, it didn't work, how it worked. So yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, it's a motivating factor. It can be I wouldn't call it a demotivating factor. I think metrics are always motivating personally.
But it can redirect you. If you discover something's not working in your marketing, for example, through a UTM code, it redirects you onto something that should motivate you more so that you're not wasting time and money.
Yep.
I'm looking on my notes here, and I mentioned, a feedback loop. Like, that's a fundamental in any product company, to have a feedback loop. You have assumptions, hypotheses that you want to test, right? You do it, you run the experiment, you measure, and then you iterate based on that, or whether dump the idea or think about something. So that's the fundamental, in anything that you build when it comes to products. And this is why you need it as part of the process to improve.
Yep, absolutely. What would you say, Katie? What are some of what would you say are kind of the top three, specifically talking about product metrics? Do you have it doesn't have to be top three, any three that you think are really important? What would you say we need to make sure that we're tracking in general?
Three. So many more than three. That's a hard one. Can I group them at three categories, for example, because it's a lot more than three. But yeah, everything to do with sales and renewals, which is a lot more than three. That's dozens of things. You need them separately per product, combined, date-based, but that's a category, your sales and renewals. You also need refunds, which is really important, particularly if you have multiple products. You need to know if any are generating higher refund rates than others. For example, we identified that our Post Table Pro plugin, which lists WordPress content in a table, had the highest refund rate. And that was really hard to get out of Easy Digital Downloads. It was a lot of manual spreadsheet editing to find out that that plugin had a problem with refunds, because it required the user to do more technical stuff. So as a result, we built a custom post type plugin to do loads of stuff for you before you displayed it. And anyway, so we found ways to make it easier for the user so they didn't have to be so technical. And that was because of that metric, which we really struggled to get in the first place. And the third, I would say, my favorite one is UTM code data, which is marketing led, because I really like to know where our marketing, where our sales are coming from. And there's never an accurate way to do that. And adding UTM codes to links is not accurate, but it's a guide. And I find that very, very valuable. And then in addition, which is more than three, there's a lot of second tier data that you might need as well, like average order value, customer lifetime value, projections. There's so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's all difficult to get depending on how you sell your products.
Vova might disagree with the difficult to get part.
I said depending because I know that it may not be on Freemius.
Well, we had to do a lot of sweat behind the scenes in order to, reveal it and make it easier for Freemius partners to see all the data. But I think, because my personal background coming from the startups space and SaaS and all of that, it was kind of natural, this stuff. And when I got into the WordPress ecosystem many years ago, I was kind of surprised to see that, everyone flying blind here, kind of relying on intuition, guesses, loud customers or users and things like that. But, to answer your question, if I'm supposed to answer your question, Matt, is it my turn right now? Okay.
No, you absolutely should.
So I think if you are running a subscription business, then from, monetary metrics, MRR growth is probably, if you would need to track one thing, I would do that and make sure that it's above zero, right? Which basically says that your business keeps growing financially. That's kind of the fundamental. And it's not MRR, it's MRR growth, meaning how much new contribution you're getting into the MRR. But as Katie said, there are tons of important metrics. There are monetary metrics, marketing metrics, product metrics. You can measure, so many things. I would say that from my observation, most people are kind of measuring, the top funnel things and bottom of the funnel things. What is my traffic? How much money do I make? Right? But if you take, and this is also in my notes here, you can break down pretty much every process into a set of multiple actions that needs to happen from that user that visiting your website to the dollar that gets into your bank. So the more you break that process into steps and start to measure how people are actually going through that, it generates a funnel basically that you can measure. And it helps you to identify the weak points in your funnel and help you to narrow down your focus on your, on parts that maybe are easy wins, but can make a big difference, etc. But you first need to see the data visually even to identify this stuff, because understanding that you get X amount of users and you get Y dollars, that's cool, and that you can you can increase that by getting more users. Okay, that's a simple equation. But maybe there are many users that are left behind for some reason in between, that you can much easier, with less efforts, optimize that process, rather than investing money right now in paid ads or whatever other marketing activities. Because if we're looking on our ecosystem, many of the founders, product makers are technical people. They don't like to do marketing, and actually making an impact on the upper side of the funnel, on the top of the funnel, is more challenging for them. And they prefer to do like inner tweaks in the product, in the process, that it's kind of easier and also slightly more fulfilling, I would say, as a builder, because like you're building stuff rather than writing content or participating in podcasts and things like that. So this is something that I would highly recommend, to see how you can break down processes into like small things and then narrow down the opportunities. Understand? You understand what I'm saying? So
No, absolutely. No, and I do really appreciate the way that you're trying to emphasize what a lot of folks call the middle of funnel, and you're broadening it out to lots of steps, not just one middle of funnel activity, but lots of, like, try to break it down. So it's not just simply top of funnel stuff. It's not just bottom of funnel stuff. How do you get them engaged along a whole user journey, all along the way? I think that's really helpful, and I agree with you. Often in conversations that I have with other product owners, that those are the things that they focus on the most, is just the top of funnel, and sales. And it's like there's a whole bunch of stuff going on. One of them in the middle that I really like to pay attention to is branded search. I feel like branded search really, even though it's search, it's branded, and so it's like name recognition. I feel like that's a little bit of a middle of funnel activity. Somehow or another, they have already learned about you, most likely through a free plugin, or maybe they heard about it from somebody else. They got introduced to your brand in one way or another. So whenever I see, for example, that I'm checking active installs and it looks like it's slowing down or whatnot, back when we actually had those numbers, I would often check branded search next and see if that was slowing down as well. And if I see that that's doing great, then I get a lot less concerned. But like for GiveWP in particular, but sometimes depending on the product name, branded search can be a challenge. Like the events calendar, for example, they always say that it's hard to know anything based on their brand name. The events calendar, it's like that could be lots of things. So
one little thing that I wanted to mention about important metrics. So if we're talking about the non-monetary metrics, then I think understanding your abandonment rate is really important. Like, how many people, like knowing how many people are starting to use your product, right? And how many of those actually leaving your product. Because you can optimize, again, similar to money, right? To the monetary. I'm still here. Don't worry. It's my camera, something. It flashes sometimes. So there are two ways to get more users. One is increase the traffic, visibility of the product. The other way is to try to identify why people are uninstalling your plugin, and resolve those issues. And many times it's pretty easy, actually, much easier than getting more users.
Yeah, that's the general marketing theory, that it's easier to retain customers than to find new ones. This would come in the middle, wouldn't it? Because they're warm contacts, at least.
Interesting. I also like, Katie, what you were saying earlier about that there's so many metrics, and maybe we break them up into categories, because in one way, like, we led with talking about product metrics, but even within talking about product in general, it could be marketing metrics, it could be sales metrics, it could be like the productivity of your development team, it could be lots of things. It could be freemium oriented WordPress.org metrics. There's lots of lots of different categories of metrics. In some ways, I was thinking mostly of like adoption of the free plugin. That's where my head goes. Like, how do we measure adoption of our free offerings? Which, Katie, I'm failing a little bit. You, for a long time, had no free offerings, right? And
yeah, we've got some, although it's not a key part of our business. But for example, our top selling plugin, we retrospectively introduced a free document library plugin as a marketing thing, basically, rather than the other way around like most people do. And we used UTM codes to track where people were clicking on it, both from the WordPress.org page and also the things like the settings pages and the setup wizard and all the different touch points within the free plugin and documentation where they were clicking through and buying the pro version. So that we were amazed at the results, actually. And UTM codes only capture a small proportion, but I know that for companies where the free plugin is more central, then there are better ways to do it. And I don't know much about Freemius Insights, but I think that's the typical way to track the success of your free plugin, isn't it, Vova?
You can use an opt-in mechanism. There are other tricks that some people are doing. For example, one is using videos, embedded videos like Vimeo, because they do provide you analytics on how many renders and views actually. And I've seen some companies doing that in order to just to understand how many people, install the plugin and activate it. So they redirect to like a getting started page and automatically render a Vimeo video, and then they're getting some analytics on that. Again, it's not like 100% precise, but it provides like much better indication than just a static number that we have right now, or the obfuscated numbers that we had before, whatever you want to call that. Opt-in is also not optimal, because not everyone opt-in. Some people don't like it, whatever. So you need to find the balance that works for you and for your business. But that's kind of the way. There are additional heuristics that you can put in place to get estimates. There are things that you can do that are kind of gray areas. There's a lot of gray areas in our ecosystem. But yeah, those are the common.
Yeah, I think the video embed is clever for sure, especially because there is so much data available on viewership in YouTube analytics in particular. I haven't looked at Vimeo.
So YouTube don't provide that. It's only Vimeo that actually tells you how many renders of the page, because YouTube will tell you how many people actually started to click the play.
Yeah.
While Vimeo can tell you how many people actually saw the video without playing necessarily.
Impressions, essentially.
Yeah, impressions. Yeah.
Interesting. Nice. That's a clever one. Cool. Any other thoughts on important metrics or why this is so important for product owners?
I think maybe another input that I can add is typically you can kind of analyze what is the process that your user or customer need to take in order to get to the aha moment with your product, to feel, okay, we're interested to continue, or it will significantly increase, the chance that they will actually keep using your product. So the steps to getting there is something that, it's worth to track those. Again, in theory, I'm not talking, there are practical stuff in our ecosystem and the things that the jumps that you need to do in order to get data. But in theory, if you have a gallery plugin, right, and a person never created the gallery, then your product is useless for them. They didn't get to that moment. So it is like a good measurement to track is how many people that install your product actually create their first gallery. And then thinking about how you can optimize that. If you have a backups plugin, how many people actually made a backup that use the product, or GiveWP, created a page for donations. Whatever is your kind of the premise of the product that you want people to get to that moment, So this is something that, very important to measure if you can.
That's really interesting. Yeah, because of the onboarding and the retention side of things. And some plugins have access to how people are using the software over time. For example, WP Fusion, because of the API side of things, everything goes through their servers. They can track how people are using it and that they're continuing to over time, in order to make sure they're likely to renew, for example, and reach out if there's problems. And there's lots of things you can do if you have that data. Whereas other plugins and themes as well, you may not be getting that call home in order to know how people are using the product.
Yeah, and you can also trigger different automations to help people, move through the funnel to whatever you want to move them, right? You succeeded with that first step. Let us help you and educate you or guide you how to get to the next step, to kind of unlock the capabilities and hopefully what you're actually looking for. Because one of the things that we learned very early on with Freemius, and when we started to see adoption of our analytics, is that there, on average, I think it was 21% of people are uninstalling products because they didn't get to that aha moment or didn't understand how to get there. They're like, I installed it and I'm not sure what's going on here. So it's really important to help them get there. And without knowing that number, let's starting with that, like, you're kind of, like we said, blind. So
yeah, how would you get that, for example, on a gallery plugin? Why would it be calling home at the point that you create your first gallery so that you know that that's happened?
Well, you would need permission to store that information at some point. Either try to capture that permission in the beginning, or I'm sure there are creative ways that people can figure out how to do that. Like, you can maybe incentivize someone. You unlock, you created your first gallery, get a coupon, whatever, something that will send some signal, but with the permission of the user to get there. So there are ways, without necessarily like forcing an immediate. If you do ask an opt-in in the beginning to share information, great, perfect. You get permissions, you can do all this stuff. But if you want to do that kind of gradually, more kind of carefully, then you'll need to be creative and think out of the box.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like, I like that idea in terms of triggering some sort of event after the first touch point happens. Like, thinking of GiveWP, there's definitely a way in which we can, after they install the plugin, we can say, like, there's no donation forms currently. And then once the first donation form gets triggered, they can get a pop-up just that one time that says, congratulations, you just published your first donation form. Tell the world about it, or something. And it could be like a go link. We call them go links, a short link in one way or another, and be able to track how many people actually clicked on tell the world about their first donation form or not. Of course, you get diminishing returns, because it's like, 10,000 people created a new form, but only like 1,000 of them clicked on the link. But it's a nice anonymous way to get some metrics without having to ask for any personal information or storing anything. That's clever.
That's a good point. We do actually have that on some of our plugins, but at that touch point, it asked you to leave a review, particularly on our free plugins. We have that. So when you create your first table, if it's a table plugin, for example, or you add your first document, if it's a document library, then it does a dashboard notice. And we really agonized over that because we hate dashboard notices, but we felt it was contextual. You've just published a document, maybe you're happy and interested and engaged enough at that point to interact with the notice, and then it disappears. And we tried to make it not annoying, but I think we put there is a UTM code on that, so we can use it for data. But it feels like quite an indirect way of getting that metric, doesn't it? It would be better to be able to track everybody who creates their first document and know who the ones that never did it are, so you can reach out and help them. And that's missing still.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
I have a bunch of things to say about it. So I would say if you are using an opt-in mechanism, even if not all the people opt in, but you can still get like percentage-based kind of data
Yeah.
based on the audience that did opt in. So it's a good representation of everyone else. The second thing, we kind of shifted from, measuring information to like triggering actions based on
Yeah.
different like milestones, but those are like super connected to each other, because you want to move people through some sort of a funnel or get to a goal. Then it makes sense that those different kind of touch points to do something. And I can share actually a pilot that we've done years ago with Next Gen Gallery before it
Mm.
was acquired, and all of that is we did some custom event tracking. And when people did opt in, like we checked if they created a gallery, and if they did it in 24 hours, they received an automated email. I told them, hey, like what's happened? Do you need help? This is how you can, here's our support documentation. If they did create a gallery, there was a trigger of kind of the next, action in the funnel, and we had several of those. And we did see really good results in terms of how it helped them eventually with conversion to paid and reducing the churn because more people kind of received help in order to succeed in using the product.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really fascinating. It's definitely making me think. I think
Good.
I've got some homework now.
You need more spreadsheets?
That also. But I think
Always.
the question in general about like it's not only like what metrics do we want to measure. It's like there are ways in which we have to create metrics to measure. We have to actually create activity that can be tracked in one way or another. And that's specifically because of a lot of the limitations of being a distributed product, of being an open source product, or for some folks for being hosted on .org. That kind of handcuffs our options there. Not handcuffs, but just limits it intentionally and requires that people give consent, which is important. But I think those are all factors to why this subject is so kind of thorny for WordPress product owners. It's not so straightforward. When you're a SaaS, whether or not you're tracking metrics or not, you're accumulating metrics constantly when you're a SaaS because you own all the data. It's all there. It's just a matter of whether or not you're going to report on it or not. Whether or not you're going to pull it into a central database to see what's going on. But as a distributed product, there's so many hoops we have to jump through just to see if our users even care about us at all. Which I think, like, honestly, thinking back, like way when I first met Vova, that was the stuff that you and I talked about. I was like, oh my gosh, you're solving all of my problems with this platform. So I'm excited that it's come full circle and you're here today. Real quick, story time, a little bit of story time. Tell us a little bit about, let me get the little thing up. Here we go. Story time. Ta-da. Tell us a little bit about Freemius and how you are solving these problems for WordPress product owners.
Yeah, so I think Jamie did a great intro, but maybe I'll repeat a little bit. So Freemius is a sales platform for software with the focus of the WordPress ecosystem when it comes to marketing, but you could also sell SaaS, just use it as a payments and billing solution. So as part, when I started Freemius and I was talking with product owners and kind of showing them, the MVP, many were already been using other solutions out there because I reached out to people who are selling to get their feedback. And, I heard some pushbacks, feedback, etc. But one thing that I noticed is that everyone, when they saw the data, is like, what's going on here? I have data. That's amazing in WordPress. And, I realized, okay, it's interesting. And this is how, like, I decided to kind of use that as a way to get into the market, to provide something that people can try out to build initial kind of relationship with us, and hopefully later we'll use the other things that we're doing. And how we are solving that, we're basically providing an SDK that does many things behind the scenes, but the fundamental is asking users permission to share some very basic metrics. It's absolutely optional. People can skip. It's not mandatory, but most people are okay sharing information. And I do understand that some people are, more privacy concerned, and that's totally fine. But still, you get a subset of users that you can learn, something rather than having nothing. And that's really powerful. Another thing that we added over the years in the SDK is feedback collection when people uninstalling the product. And this is something, an inspiration that came from MailChimp. When you unsubscribe from MailChimp, they ask you why, right? They show you a few options. So the same thing. And the problem with WordPress is people just click deactivate. That's it. No one knows about it. No one knows why, what happened, how long it's been since they installed the plugin until they uninstalled it. So this is kind of like critical part, because we said that many times it's easier to identify why people uninstalling and tweaking that rather than doing more marketing, getting more new users, etc. So this is something that we've added. Again, not everyone, like that, but that's a balance. It's always like this. You want to get something. Some people don't like that. You're selling something. Some people aren't happy about the price and want it for free. That's just the price of doing business. I think what we learned over the years is that in the beginning we kind of focused on what we thought is the majority, but what we learned is that you want to accommodate, be as accessible as possible and give options to people. So if someone is not interested and want to, stay away from this stuff, they'll have an option to do that and turn whatever, thing that annoys them off. While others who don't mind, great. In the end of the day, they are benefiting from that. Like the entire WordPress ecosystem is benefiting from sharing data with product owners, because like up until now, it's mostly developers building products for themselves, and they getting traction. So maybe let's turn that into a business. But once you start to collect data and send users based on data and not just support tickets, you can significantly improve your products, make them more relevant to your audience, identify use cases, etc., 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 and make your product and user experience better. So in the end, you don't collect that data for yourself to store it somewhere, under your mattress, and I don't know, whatever. You do it in order to improve your product. And also, if you do it to make more money, you don't go and cash out that money. You reinvest it in the business to get better support, more developers. So we can't really ignore that the best products in the ecosystem are coming from commercial companies that are successful, because you need money in order to operate, large operation, etc. So that whole cycle is important to improve the entire products ecosystem.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree. Katie, I'd love to hear a little bit about your own experiences with metrics, collecting data, and things like that. Story time.
Yeah, well, as I mentioned before, it's always been a bit of a nightmare because we use EDD, and I love to have good data and have never really had it. So we've lots of
We are here, Katie. We're still here.
I know. That's a separate discussion. But yeah, we've always exported the sales from EDD, and then even hired people on Upwork to manipulate the spreadsheets and do things like creating sales projections and get information, really complex stuff like renewal rates for years 1, 2, 3, not just a combined renewal rate, but we want more than that. We want to know which of our products, because we've got 20 premium plugins now, we want to know which ones customers tend to buy together so we can cross promote them. All this unique random stuff, and we've just had to export our sales and get it from the spreadsheet. And so what we're doing now is that our web developer is now working on a big project to create custom data with through the API. So he's creating custom reports which will have exactly what I need. So I've been through all of my data needs, and more to do with the sales side of things rather than the marketing or the how people are using the product. But those are both future projects, so that soon we'll have kind of shiny custom reports. But it's a shame that there was nothing available, and it's kind of tempting to release it as a plugin, but EDD, the market isn't big enough to justify it. I've made this mistake before, so I'm inclined not to, because if it was WooCommerce, it might work, but EDD, no. So, but at least for our own use, we've got this custom thing that's we've had to produce, because otherwise I don't know how my business is doing, and I never have, which isn't good enough.
No, absolutely. Gosh, I resonate with that a ton. We also are on EDD, and also have had some really excellent conversations with Vova about Freemius as well. We will be jumping off EDD at some point in the near future, but that's because Stellar as a whole is moving to WooCommerce and things like that. In terms of like our own experiences, one of the first things we did was we created an exit intent pop-up, inspired largely by Freemius's exit intent as well. The really simple, like, this is like, why in the world do you want to deactivate this plugin that's giving you money? I don't understand. So we put that in there, and lo and behold, people will tell you exactly why they're deactivating it, and they're often not very nice about it. Some of my best chuckles about our users come from reading comments from our deactivation survey. It's amazing. Then, like I mentioned before, then once you start to receive that feedback, what are you going to do with it? Where are you going to put it? How are you going to analyze it? All those kinds of questions. It's not just like, let's put a pop-up and see what happens. It's more of like, well, what do you actually do with that information? It's funny when they deactivate a free product and they tell you they're deactivating it because it's too expensive. It's a free product, but of course they're probably talking about the add-ons in one way or another. Or folks tell you that it broke my website. Okay, cool. We don't have the data on what's going on your website, like what other plugin might it have conflicted with in one way or another. We don't have that at all in that thing. So after that, we built a big onboarding wizard, and in the onboarding wizard, we have the, like Vova says, the opt-into telemetry kind of situation. That started to tell us the ways in which what other plugins folks have installed at the time, what version of PHP they're running, how much donations they have already at that stage, or over a period of time, how many forms do they create, and how many of our add-ons do they have, and all that kind of information. What was fascinating to me was that we also, now that we're with Stellar, several other of the big brands at Stellar have that type of telemetry as well. And when it comes to what plugins are installed, all of our numbers are almost the same, which I thought for Give, it would be a little bit different. These are nonprofit organizations. Why should the large majority of the Give users all be running WooCommerce as well? But they do. They're also running WooCommerce.
Because they probably tried WooCommerce for donations first, realized it's not working, and then they just kept it,
See,
and sometimes themes install WooCommerce for you, which I think is really irresponsible if you don't need it.
Especially because their onboarding wizard is so laborious now too. It's like,
and that installs plugins even more.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, of course, everybody has Yoast installed as well. And then we were surprised at the time. This was years ago, but like besides WooCommerce, the biggest plugin was Elementor. That was also a big issue. So we were like, oh, we definitely need to get an Elementor module add-on set up right away. So then that's the way to. That's what you have to do with this type of stuff. It's like you can't just look at it; you have to be able to make decisions based on it. So then one other thing I'll just mention is that, like I said, like you have to be able to store this data somewhere responsibly and be able to see it responsibly. We're fortunate being in Stellar now. We have a whole team dedicated to Power BI, which is basically a large business analytics platform. And so all of our telemetry data is now being stored in Power BI. We're able to make visualizations based on the data that's coming in. Not everybody gets to have. It's a kind of expensive tool, but as long as you have this stuff somewhere, you can use something like Data Studio or whatnot to be able to visualize, or even Google Sheets to be able to do these things. I think in one way or another, spending time to make sure that whatever data you're bringing in, that you're actually doing something actively with it is the biggest thing that I think a lot of folks sometimes forget about.
Yeah, that's a pet hate of mine, people that have data without acting on it.
Yeah, exactly. Because sometimes there also can be slippery slopes of like collecting too much data. And it's like now all of a sudden you have like people's personal information stored somewhere and you don't even know it, or things like that. That can be problematic or difficult, challenging. So nice. Well, we have run a little bit long. We typically try to wrap up with our best advice. And for new folks getting into WordPress product business. So I'd love to hear, what is your best advice to new product owners when it comes to metrics that they should be tracking and doing? So let's jump in with Katie. What's your best advice?
My advice is to write a list of the metrics which will help you to grow your business. Next, figure out where those metrics are going to come from and put into place something to get hold of them. And finally, as I just said, take action on it. And as Matt said as well, there's no point having it for the sake of it. It's a means to an end. So you have to make that end happen, which is to continue building your business using the data.
Absolutely. I love it. Vova.
So I would say the earlier you'll add, data practices into your product operation, the better, because it will kind of create this culture going forward as you grow, and you will have the right system. It's something that does require some effort, but like anything, if you do it early on and just maintain that and grow it over time, it will be much easier than doing it after 5-10 years. And one thing that I do want to point out is OKRs, which is objectives, key results. It's a system to kind of set up roadmaps, I would call it, but in a way that it's very measurable. And it does kind of forces you to think about objectives that you want to achieve that can be measured. And like Google it, there's a lot of videos on YouTube, etc. And even if you are just running yourself right now and don't have team members, it's a good practice to start building over time, because once you will have team members, first of all, it's good for you to set up kind of accountability of what you want to achieve going forward on whatever kind of frequency you want, whether it's annual, quarterly, the way you want it, and then being able to measure kind of whether you like how you progressed with your goals. It will also help you to be better in estimations and what you can achieve over time, etc. And obviously, once you bring new team members, it's a good practice to have. And along with the OKRs, you have to put measurements in abilities to measure those metrics. And I will give it, I'm kind of connecting the the best advice to story time right now, because I didn't mention it. Like this year, what we've done, we created this company-wide KPI tracker that is available to everyone, where everything is extrapolated from the OKRs of the different kind of, the content team, the video team, the engineering team, etc. And we do fill the information every month, and we even visualize it a little with like a progress bars in Google Spreadsheets, and we can see nicely, how we are progressing towards our end goals of the year. And it helps, to identify challenges, issues, maybe rethink the goals that we set up in place, instead of flying blind, right? So look at OKRs, try to build a way to measure your actions, and start to do it as early as you can with your business. This way you will allocate your your resources and time in the most optimal way.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the emphasis on OKRs. That's a good one. I might piggyback on that, since you both kind of said all the things that I would say as well in terms of best advice. I might piggyback a little bit on OKRs. In many ways, part of the objective of collecting metrics, let's say plugin telemetry, for example, try to decide what is your objective. Like, why do you want this data? And focus on that. Like, if you're just getting into it, let's say you're going to launch some sort of telemetry opt-in in your plugin. In many ways, you do kind of have to do a shotgun effect of like, let's just grab everything that we can in the first place, because you don't want to miss out on that data later when you're like, oh, I should have asked this or that or whatever. So you kind of have to do that. Try to grab as much as you can, as responsibly as you can. But once the data starts to come in, don't just go blindly looking through all the data. That's just like a rabbit hole, waste of time waiting to happen. You're going to end up being like, oh, I wonder why everybody has PHP 5.7. Let's go figure that out. That might not be relevant or important. Instead, really try to ask, what data do I want? Why am I tracking it? What am I going to do with this data? And that's a little bit of piggybacking on the OKR perspective. Is spend like a quarter of the year just focusing on one kind of section of metrics in order to start building a practice of analyzing the metric, reflecting on it, trying to act on it, and then move over maybe into marketing, where you have another big shotgun effect. Google Analytics is always pulling as much information as you need. And if you log in there and you're just like, this is overwhelming, I don't even know what I'm looking at, you have to go into it in the first place with an objective. I need to learn how people are finding my website one way or another. That's a decent objective. I need to find how long are people staying on my pricing page, or why they might be bouncing. That's a good objective. Go into each of these things with an objective in mind, not just like, let me look at all the data now, because you'll get overwhelmed really quickly. Cool. Well, this has been a great discussion. Vova, always great to talk with you. I always go away with homework in my mind every time we chat. Katie,
My
as
pleasure.
always. Yeah, Katie, it's great to have you back. Don't go on vacation again. It's really less fun without you here. So
You got good people on while I was gone. I was quite jealous.
yeah, it was good too. Do we have somebody? We do, right? We have somebody lined up for next week, right?
Yes, we do. We have Adrian Spyak coming on next week to talk about, just looking up the exact title of the topic, think outside the box, unlocking the potential for new WordPress product ideas. So he's behind several successful products, including Cosmos Lab. Well, Cosmos Labs has multiple products such as Profile Builder and membership plugins and things like that, and also Translate Press. So he has a background of coming up with good product ideas and implementing them very well. So it should be really interesting.
Nice. I'm looking forward to it. So great. Thanks, everyone. Have a good one. If you can help us out with the like button and the subscribe button, I got to say those things. That would be great. Refer us to a friend, and have a good week. We'll see you all next week.
Bye.